Real Kyper and Bourne on Sportsnet 590 The Fan.
Good afternoon and welcome to Real Kyper and Bourne. It is one of those days where we don't have Real Kyper. It's a lumberjack special today.
Right.
You get Brent Gunning and Justin Bourne both in our red and black plaid. Gunner, how are you?
Doing well. I did not plan this, and boy, I can't believe that's how we started the day with, yes, us both looking like lumberjacks here. Always happy to be in. I am not the Real Kyper. Very fraudulent Brent Gunning, but always happy to join you guys.
It is like the most Canadian thing, though. Gunner has a son named Gordy.
I do, yes.
We are in red and black plaid. We are going to talk about the Maple Leafs.
We're gonna make way too much out of certain things for the Maple Leafs. It is truly as Canadian as it gets.
Yeah, this should be sponsored by poutine and maple syrup. That's where we're at today.
But here's the thing about plaid. It's the go-to for any male in Canada. That's why people joke about it, because it's not unique that both you guys wear plaid. I saw 4 other people wearing plaid.
Yeah, it's just
the thing.
what's unique is we're both in red and black plaid.
But red and black, it's the most popular plaid.
This is
the jacket I wore here today is red and black.
When you enter the country, they issue you your standard red and black plaid.
I've had the same one for 7 years, and I
Yeah.
wear it every day. I got to get a new one. Anyways.
Well, anyway, we all look fantastic. We'll leave it at that. Today, we're going to be joined by Luke Fox, our Leafs beat writer, up on all the latest there. We're going to get David Amber, one of the best of all time, my absolute fave, DA. And we're going to get Haley Salvion, national hockey writer with The Athletic, doing some radio work for us at Sportsnet this year. So excited to have all that going on. Before we get to that, though, we're going to talk about the Maple Leafs and all the pertinent details. Some news today. They got Nick Robertson appears to be in. Dennis Mulligan out.
Hey,
I know.
we like that.
We do like that. That's good. Victor Mete is going to be in for Jake Muzzin, which we like a little bit less, not because of Victor Mete, but not great for Jake Muzzin. And we're going to get into that in detail. But really, the story of the day, and it sounds dumb that this is the story of the day, but yesterday, Sheldon Keefe called out his elite players after the game, after the loss to Arizona. He simply said, our elite players weren't elite players, which is what separates us from Arizona. And I said on their show yesterday that that's something he's going to have to talk about with those players, because you can't just talk about, take shots like that and not have to back it up in the room when you go see them personally. So there's been, I guess, a little bit of fallout from that. Any initial thoughts on?
Well, I was listening to you guys. Always love listening to the show, and I heard the point you're making, and I understand the idea of, hey, you guys, whatever you want to make that, the core 4, throw Riley in there as well. You were a focal point of this postgame. There may be some questions, but would any of those guys sit there and say, no, I was awesome? How dare you say that about me?
Right.
That's the part that, I understand no one likes to be publicly criticized,
Right.
But I also understand that I would imagine every single one of whoever those guys are, whoever the elite players on this team that Sheldon Keefe was talking about, make it as small of a group as you want, make it as big of a group as you want. It doesn't matter. Nobody should have been thrilled with the game that they played against the Coyotes. So I understand addressing it. I understand saying, hey, this happened. Maybe you're going to get asked about it. Here's what I said. I don't think there's anything wrong with that. But for those players to take offense by it, again, I understand not wanting to, be called out publicly, but looking in the mirror, they should know.
Yeah, I agree. So one of the things I want to talk about, I think before we really go into what it can mean and does and is, because I know some people on Leafs Twitter don't appreciate that Sheldon Keefe felt the need that he had to back up what was on its face a pretty fair statement, we think. Sammy, you want to start with Marner's comments?
We'll go Marner, Matthews, and then do Keefe.
All right.
So we'll start with Marner.
All right, let's do that.
Oh, not at all. No, he called us in, and we had to talk, and it was all good. I mean, like I said, that's part of this game is to talk to one another and explain what you meant. So I don't think anyone was hurt by the comments or anything like that. So
Can I ask who us is?
I'm sure it's the leadership guys, the guys that I don't know who else he talked to, but talked to me for sure. So it's all good.
Pretty harmless.
That's fine.
Rosie was on a tear down there today.
Was she?
Oh, yeah. She was just, I love it. Asking the tough questions. She was grinding everybody. It's good.
Yeah.
It's a focal point thing to say about your stars and to follow up on it at your first opportunity at the next practice. Love it. So just saying that she was on everyone.
Right.
Big fan.
So in hearing those comments from Marner, it doesn't sound like anything overly wrong with he addressed it. We moved on, whatever. You want to run through them then, Sam?
Yeah,
We'll just go to Matthews next. Let's do that.
What's said in the media, and then obviously what's said behind doors, and in like private discussions is maybe different than how it's interpreted out in the media. So this is my 7th year here now, and I kind of understand how it works now. But I think the conversations that kind of go on behind closed doors without media and stuff are more generally discussions and communications rather than just harping on guys.
You're right. It is the Toronto market that we end up discussing this stuff. But I don't know.
Quickly, I know there's way more important things. It just slapped me in the face. His 7th year. Like, we always talk about how fast windows go, and not to, like, we will talk about that all season long, I'm sure. It's already year 7 for Austin Matthews.
I know.
Like,
I remember when the Leafs pulled the card, or when they flipped the card over, that the Leafs were going to get first overall, and here we are 7 years later. Okay, what did Sheldon Keefe have to say about elite players not being elite?
Well, I had a lot of other things to talk to him about. Just regular check-ins that I have with all of our players, but that was on the list of things to discuss, and I guess I'm glad I did it because they didn't know what I was talking about. So it helped them prepare to deal with you guys today, at least. But it's regular check-in with the guys, but that was on the list to discuss. I mean, I used some of the wrong words to try to describe what I was trying to describe, which is that the difference in the game I find is just we weren't able to produce, whether it's power play or 5-on-5, and that's really the difference, with all the puck time we had and everything like that. But by no means was I meaning anything beyond that, which is what I wanted them to be sure of. And as it turned out, they didn't know what I was talking about, but which is a good thing. But at the same time, important that they know where I was coming from.
Sammy, I want to get your take on this in a sec. I'll start with Gunnar, though. What are your thoughts hearing Sheldon Keefe kind of walk that back?
That's exactly it. He walked it back. It was not this wasn't a guy who took the podium and slammed it and said, my star players are terrible, we can't win with this effort. It was, do you know how much better these guys are than any Coyotes player pretty much ever? Sorry, Shane Doan. Like, that's basically what he was saying. And the idea to have to walk that back, I immediately went to the comments he had. I think it was after a loss against the Rangers last year. He used the S word. He called them soft, and he had to walk that back as well. And part of this is just
how we played soft.
Yeah, he did say it. And this is all part of why it's harder in a massive market like Toronto. Something like this, Daryl Sutter is so critical of his team all the time. Now, part of that is cup rings, pedigree, everything. And yes, that is absolutely part of the equation. But other markets, guys are critical of star players, and it's just a blip in the news cycle, and that's that. But the fact that you had to walk it back, that's immediately where my head went, was to the soft comments last year.
Yeah, I think the concern, there is the perception of, are the inmates running the asylum? Like, can you not criticize guys in your team without having to justify it, without having to say, I used the wrong words, or, he didn't outright apologize for it, but did feel the need to explain himself a little bit. And I think what you worry about is who's making the decisions. Is it those guys going to Sheldon saying, well, you can't act like that? Or is it him saying, you guys didn't play well, and, I'll tell you when it's time. You sit down, shut up, and I'll put you over the boards, and we'll carry on. It does bring questions about who has the power in that dynamic.
So I've had a lot of thoughts where you guys are sitting here talking, and I think we're making too much of it.
Yeah.
Now that I've listened to all the clips, and now that I've listened back, if anything,
the
way that Marner and Matthews were talking there, they don't give a crap. Sorry, really close to swearing there for no reason. But they seem to really don't give a crap. Like,
in hearing those all back to back, I actually agree with you. It's funny because talking about it, having read the quotes, it seemed a lot worse.
But I just don't know if it was no big deal, the way that Matthews and Marner made it seem in those quotes, which it seemed like it was really, no skin off their ass. They didn't really chap them at all. Why he felt the need to say, I used the wrong words. To me, like, if it's not that big a deal, then why did you have to go out and walk it back? That's the only part of it now, listening to it, that kind of surprises me. It doesn't seem like they were really that pissed off at all.
Yeah, nothing on the players there so much as why does Sheldon feel the need to say.
But like Matthew said, what's said in the media and what's behind closed doors, maybe they killed him behind the scenes. Maybe they're like, what the hell are you talking about? Like, to the Four guys were the only guys who scored goals in that game. Like we
had 70% of the shot attempts when we were on the ice, and we had 2 goals.
What are you talking about? Why are you saying this? But if that's not what was said, I don't see any need to walk back what he said, and I hate that he walked it back. That's my only take. I think we're making too much of it now that I've heard it all and thought about it as you guys were talking, but I still don't like the fact that he walked it back.
Yeah. No, I think that's what the frustration is feeling like the guy like Sheldon would need to, basically acquiesce to those guys who, again, they didn't seem overly frustrated by the whole thing.
They were so much more cryptic. They're like, we'll leave it at that. And what's said in the room via text, it just sounds like a completely, like you picture them with like Mr. Burns finger tented, like, yes. It's just, it comes across so differently when you actually hear them saying it.
It does. Absolutely.
Well, it just seems to me if you're walking that stuff back, there's part of him he's feeling this.
You think Keith is?
For sure.
We talked about Boudreau yesterday on the show, and like, is this a guy who's feeling, pressure in the hot seat? You don't think after 4 games, Sheldon feels like, desperation?
I don't know how you couldn't.
I think he sees it. I think he sees it trending towards whatever the Chicago game was, where it's like everybody in the building was just like, oh, they really better win that game tonight because things could change. I think he just sees himself not running out of track, but it's just the season gets late early. We're going to be an 1/8 of the way through this thing. U.S. Thanksgiving is right around the corner, and that is kind of the delineating point always, and teams have gone on runs otherwise. I just think it's a case of a guy who realizes, and boy, stop me if you've heard this one from the Leafs before, how big a year this is, and you really don't want to let it get away from you. Because that's what it felt like to me.
Just to further on my point, I don't know how you could watch the guys that you're supposed to be motivating, the guys that you talk to every day, the guys that you preach to, hey, don't have these crappy starts against crappy teams. Hey, don't do this in these games. And have them go out there and just do it over and over and over after however long he's been coaching. I mean, the COVID year, it's weird to think about that he's only had 1 full real year, right?
Yeah.
This will be his first normal year.
Right.
Which is crazy to think about.
I know.
Well, I guess, no, he had half the season when Babs got fired, it was normal, and then they got shut down.
Right, but that's a half season where he doesn't get a training camp, bubble season, shortened season.
He's had a really weird sort of tenure as a coach in terms of what's been going on in the world. But, like, I don't know how you don't feel it if you're him.
Yeah.
Like, this is season 3, right? It's time for these guys to start listening to the message, and they're just playing the exact same as they always do. There's no way he's not feeling it.
Yeah. Well, then, I don't think we should beat this up any further then, because honestly, I don't think it's much of anything. And I just go off on what I see in social media, and it's a big deal. It doesn't seem like a big deal. So
no, it is.
Turn the page.
We've all kind of talked it around now, and we blew it up just a touch.
Let's go on to Mitch Marner talking about Jake Muzzin. Jake Muzzin has been put on IR. That means he'll miss, 3 games, something, fairly minor. Sounds like he doesn't have a concussion, doesn't have a head injury, was a neck injury. But there are still concerns, and the comments from Marner were, I guess, a little bit scary about
Bleak.
Yeah. About the severity, like he's presumably talked to the guy by now, and if this is where their conversations are centered around, let's hear Marner on Jake Muzzin.
Doing what he can do. Obviously for him, it's just making sure that if he does come back and play this year or whatever happens, just make sure that he's going to be able to do whatever he wants to do the rest of his life and enjoy the time with his family, his kids, and whatever he wants to do. So I think that's the most important thing. And obviously on the ice for us, it's a big missing piece. He does a lot for us on and off the ice. So just calmness on the ice when he has the puck, penalty kill wise, just the leadership he brings, all that kind of stuff. So it's definitely a big piece that will be missing. But life off the ice is always more important, and your family is.
That's just jarring. I mean, it's
one. Hear the start of that clip again,
please.
Yeah.
Doing what he can do. Obviously for him, it's just making sure that
I'm directing back here. Keep going.
Doing what he can do. Obviously for him, it's just making sure that if he does come back and play this year or whatever happens,
if he comes
just
back
make sure
and
that
plays this year.
Yeah. Again, he's talked to Jake.
He's his best buddy.
Yeah, apparently they're best buds. So yeah, if he comes back this year, is a lot different picture than he's on IR. Could be 3 games, not a head injury.
There's just so many ways to go. The thing that's scary from a not hockey perspective, but like a life, Jake Muzzin's life perspective is And again, this team obviously has way more info on his medical history and what he's dealing with right now. Muzzin has more info than I do, but you just see it happen. And I'm not saying this is the one, but it just seems like a guy who's going to play until he can't skate or stand up anymore. Like, it's starting to feel that way with Muzzin of, no, I have to do it. And that we've talked about this in all sports and all walks of life. It is commendable when someone wants to push through and push through and push through. But at a certain point in time, and there's hockey ramifications that we'll speak of, but just for his life, like, if a guy who is that close with him, who has had several days to talk to him about all this, is saying those types of things, and again, it's scary.
Yeah. You know, I look at the Jake Muzzin situation and I could see in the locker room, you know, he tweaks his neck on the hit and he talks to a trainer and they're like, yeah, you know, we're just, you know, it's sore or we got some muscle tension, whatever. And where he thinks it's like, it's not a big deal. It's the Marner quote for me that where someone who's talked to him says, if he plays again this year, you know, you gotta think about his kids. It's like, hold on. You know, that's a totally different look at what the Leafs should expect from this guy. And if you're, you know, looking at the Maple Leafs, you take it away from the man of Jake Muzzin and say, okay, let's look at the hockey team and how this affects the hockey team. It significantly affects the hockey team. The D-core has been a question mark on this team right now. I look around the league, I actually wrote something that may be up on sportsnet.ca. But the teams who are doing well have good D-cores. It's Vegas's D-core is good. The Flames have a good D-core. Colorado, like, you know, those teams, the Rangers. But you look at the teams that struggle, the Hurricanes, that was mentioned too, and the teams that haven't been great don't have great D-cores. The Leafs have had a slow start. Their D-core has been questionable. Sandin hasn't been his best self. They don't have Liljegren. Now they don't have Muzzin, and Victor Mete's in. You know, when you look at beyond the man, Jake Muzzin, what's the solution here? Like, Jordy Ben coming back? Like,
well, that goes back to the first thing Marner said. If he plays this year, those are very different conversations. If there's a world where Jake Muzzin, and this goes back to all the conversations we had at the deadline last year of, well, what's this team gonna do at the deadline? Well,
they can't use that money.
It's like, do they have Jake Muzzin on LTIR or not?
Yeah.
And that's just going to be the answer to that. If it's a situation where he's going to find himself on LTIR, and that's the doomsday scenario that Marner potentially laid out there of, if he doesn't play again this year, well, then that changes things. You know, this team has used a lot of prospect capital, has used a lot of draft pick capital. Guess what? There's still more there. You can still go trade. You could do a Florida Panthers and trade all your first rounders forever. If you have the, 5 or 4-5 for Muzzin, if you have that to play around with, then that changes things. You can go get a defenseman.
It's actually 5.625. It's a lot of money. Woo. So it is that does change things significantly for how to replace him, but you can't just go out and find guys very easily. No. And it's almost like one of those scenarios where the best case, if he can't play, to just make that determination and I believe, you know, get some insurance to cover that, and then you know what you have. But I fear for the Leafs, and again, I also fear for Muzzin and his health, but when you look at the hockey's perspective.
I said that first, so we're clear.
Okay, we're good on that. I fear for the Leafs that kind of the worst case scenario is he's kind of hurt.
Yep, and he's like, I'll be back in December, and then that turns into January.
Yeah, he's back in 6 weeks, and then he plays 4 or 5 games to get up to speed. He gets dinged. He's out for 2 weeks. And you kind of never really get what you're paying for. That's a pretty bleak outlook for the Leafs D. I looked at other teams that have started slow. Tampa Bay Lightning, they're 1-3. Their D-core, is that right, Sammy?
Yeah, I'm sure they'll stay like that too.
Well, listen,
didn't you pick them to win the cup there?
I did.
You Lightning lover.
I don't think they're suddenly bad.
Wow.
But they don't have Ryan McDonough. They don't have Jan Ruda. They're playing Cal Foote and Hayden Fleury and someone called Nick Perbix. And
I don't even believe you.
I know.
Is that a man?
Yeah, I know, it's a real guy. So that all of a sudden they're struggling when their D-core looks weak. And I worry about the Leafs because I think it's become a big part of hockey today. Everyone focuses on speed and skill, but you need good players on your back end to deal with that.
Yeah, you do. And sorry, Mickey, you want in?
No, go ahead.
I was just going to say, and look, this point's been made a billion times, but it doesn't mean it's still not true. He's the only one of him back there. Mark Giordano is a rugged-ish, in sense of.
What about Lyubushkin?
Well, okay, hey, let me lead a horse to water. You got it there. That was the guy. He was the only other guy who gave them that element. And yes, like you mentioned, Lyubushkin. What verb did we decide on for that hit? Eviscerated, crumpled Holloway on the Oilers last night. He's the only guy who lays the body that way for a Leafs team. And I do think sometimes that's a little overstated. Of you need to have the heaviest guys.
Yeah.
You need some. You can't have none.
Sure. Yeah. No, I got some pushback on Twitter by noting that, boy, Sure be nice to have a right shot physical D-man for 2.7 mil, but easier said than done. I know they didn't have the room to keep him, but I did get a lot of people saying, no one was saying that when they didn't resign him. Yeah, we were.
You did. You were preaching it the entire time.
Yes.
But I take a different look at the Muzzin thing with Sandin, because now Sandin's elevated to the second pair.
Yeah.
It's like, this is why his quote-unquote holdout was the stupidest thing of all time.
Just cost him being at his best.
Like, why did you didn't think someone was going to get hurt? You didn't think you were going to get to play? Like, you wanted more time? You wanted more money? Like, what did you want?
It's a really good point.
Now you're playing on the second pair of the team that has huge aspirations when you have a chance to prove how good you are and make more money.
And they've bumped Gio off the second power play unit. Sandin gets that spot.
That was always where that was going.
Like, it's tough to sell a guy on you have to sit and wait for someone to get hurt. But given Muzzin's history and the age,
feels like they kind of knew this would happen pretty quickly.
Well, it does feel like that.
How could you not?
Which, if you feel like that, and we all do about Muzzin going forward, does someone have a talk with a guy? And you can't retire guys for them.
Okay, this is something you can't say, but I'm here, so I can say it. The amount of conversations I've had with people over the last few days of, look, the Lou Kyle thing is so dead and gone. Lou Lamoriello would have found a way. The amount of conversations I've had with people who said, look, I know you can't just tell a guy, I know. It feels like Lou might have. And is that unfair to say because we don't know? Yeah, it kind of is. But that's
what Robert Island is.
It's a big, big issue for this team right now. And again, it's not like we're not shocked that this happened. All offseason, it was a conversation I had with countless people, and I'm sure everybody else did too, of, okay, but what happens when he gets hurt and then you don't have that 5-6 available?
Listen, I wrote it before the season. I said that Jake Muzzin's health will become a concern. That was like my third or fourth prediction for the Leafs on the season.
Good job by you.
Well, thank you.
And goaltending too, right?
Wow, yeah, that came up as well.
All over it.
Goaltending was not a tough call.
Neither was Muzzin.
Yeah, that's fair. But so, yeah, it is something they probably saw coming. I guess that's why they are deeper than they have ever been in terms of depth with Ben and Ben, Mete, Dahlstrom is unfortunately
hurt.
Called up Krall. I talked to some people around the Marlies, and my understanding with Krall is like toolsy.
I was going to say, I was there for the preseason game that he got a ton of running, and he does pop at times. Like,
lots to like.
It's not me saying throw him in the NHL right now.
The two things that I'm told are decision-making isn't quick enough and not physical enough for a guy his size yet. So, yeah. Sorry, Sam, we have Luke there. All right. Luke Fox joining us now to talk more about the Toronto Maple Leafs. Luke, how you doing?
I'm doing well. How are you guys?
We're good. We're good. I appreciated that you also apparently drive a 2009 Jetta and listen to rap music. Is that true?
It is. I've been listening to rap music a lot longer than I've been listening to my driving my 09 Jetta, so that dates me a little bit.
Yeah, same, buddy. It's starting to feel a little awkward, I'll be honest. But anyway, appreciate you joining us today. The first thing we talked about off the top is we all kind of gave our takes. Is it a big deal that Marner and Matthews had commentary on Sheldon walking back his elite comments thing? Sheldon mentioned why he did it. What are your thoughts on elite comment gate and maybe the non-story that it is? I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, it's been blown out of proportion. I mean, I was there when Sheldon made those comments, and I think it had more to do with the Arizona game specifically. I mean, when you step back, the top six has dominated play, and everyone's basically a point per game out of those elite players except for Austin Matthews. He has one goal. He's tipped it in. He hasn't shot one in the net yet, which is, not the start he wants after 4 games. But I'm not too worried about those guys. I'm sure they're going to get their points. But in that game, their power play wasn't clicking. The power play got booed off the ice in the second period. You compare the two rosters, and it's almost laughable, right? Like,
right.
Arizona's number one center is Travis Boyd, who was waived a year and a half ago by the Leafs. Their top goal scorer.
You're not helping.
Is Nick Ritchie? Who was, traded away in pretty much a salary dump deal not that long ago. So if you're coaching and you got rid of 2 of these guys who are, making an impact for the opposition, and you have, I'd say 5, maybe 6 players better than any one player on the Coyotes, you go in and you expect not only to win that game, but to dominate that game. You expect your power play to be a force. You don't expect to get beat on special teams. So, yeah, if you're Sheldon Keefe, I think you have a right to be a little bit embarrassed how things unfolded in that game. And it wasn't as if he called anyone out by name, but using the phrase elite players after your second loss, after your first loss, you used the word unacceptable and we need to lose. To me, that says less about how the elite players are playing when there is room to grow, for sure, and more about the tension that Sheldon is under this season. I think it feels tight. And then for him today to kind of soften his comments a little bit and feel the need to explain it and couch it and all that, it smacked to me of soft and purposeless from a year ago in that Rangers game. And I don't know. I think we're making too big of a deal of it. But at the same time, if a coach said something, I think he should just say, yeah, they didn't have a great game.
Right.
They're going to be better next game. And kind of stand by his comments more than it feels like a little tiptoeing around things. And I think that speaks to how, the pressure that Sheldon's under right now.
So you remember last year, Luke, leading into that Chicago game, I think it was Kampf ties it late and Nylander scores an OT, or maybe it was vice versa there. But that game felt like, maybe it's a little too strong to say it's saved Sheldon Keefe's job, but it definitely felt like that was a big momentum turn for them. Do you have a similar feeling around this? It feels to me like it's crazy to say, given that the team's 2-2 compared to the disastrous start they got off to last year. It does feel like things are already tenser at this point in time than they were when we got to that Chicago game last year. Like, it's amazing how quickly things have got tense. You mentioned them being booed off the ice in the second period, power plays getting booed. Like, part of this is stemming from the fan base, for sure, of year after year of first round exit and learning some lessons and let's try it again and kick the can down the road. Part of that is definitely coming from the fan base, but it certainly feels like it's the calls coming from inside the house as well.
Yeah, no, it does feel similar. I know one reporter, not me, that had drafted a Sheldon Keefe fired story just in case before the not this year, but before puck drop going into that Chicago Blackhawks game. That's how tense it was on the road there. It was very tense. I wouldn't say this season has reached that point, but they lose three more in a row or something. We could be at that point. Now, this team is talented enough that if they rip off 5 wins in a row, I don't think any of us would be shocked either. Nope. But it is kind of crazy that we're riding this roller coaster so early. And I think the reason is because when you looked at the schedule, the Washington Capitals, guys, I know they're a playoff team last year, but that did not look like a playoff team.
No.
So when you consider the 4 teams they've played, the fact that they're only .500, the fact that they haven't scored more than 3 goals in any of those games, the fact that they've looked out of sync and sloppy for prolonged stretches, disinterested at times, I think that's a concern because it's stuff the fan base has seen before. It's kind of old habits, playing, not your best against teams that are purposely tanking. That kind of thing I think is just kind of annoying to some fans. And I think if you're the coach, you're trying to pull at every possible string you can get, which is why I think he called out the team so harshly after the Montreal game.
So a few changes have been made. Rasmus Sandin has been elevated. He's playing with Mark Giordano. Dennis Malgin is out and Nick Robertson is in for the first game of the season. What are your thoughts on, mostly why it didn't happen against Arizona? Malgin's performance, I don't think has been stellar, but what are your thoughts on bringing in Nick Robertson now?
Yeah, I'm glad it happened. I think, it's a bit of a failing of the system maybe, or the management of the cap, that you're so tight to the cap that you can't reward a kid that is a draft pick of yours, a prospect of yours, when he had the training camp of his life,
right,
was a standout. Like, Merritt got shoved right, to the back of the line behind finance and managing the salary cap. And I get it. He's the one who didn't need to clear waivers. But it didn't sit right with me that this kid busted his butt, did everything asked of him, was a star in the preseason. And, I mean, that's all he can play, right, is the preseason. That's what's there. And he has to go down. Then he serves his time with the Marlies, gets a couple points, scores a goal before he gets called up. And then you stick with Dennis Malgin, who, ended up playing less than 9 minutes, I think, against the Coyotes. He hasn't had a shot on net since the Montreal game. He's an obvious candidate to come out. So, on the flip side, I think there is some nice poetry there that Nick gets his season debut against his older brother Jason's team, the Dallas Stars, tomorrow. So that'll be kind of nice. But this spot has been hard earned, and I expect him to come out flying tomorrow night. So good on him. Nice to see. And I mean, it's going to be tough for Malgin to get back in the lineup if Nick Robertson has any say in it, because that is one determined kid.
Do you think there's a world where Robertson doesn't necessarily stop on that second line with Tavares? I mean, Michael Bunting's been a guy who's been moved around a little bit. We know Keefe got the blender going out in the Arizona game there. So obviously, you don't want to read too much into it, depending on what the lines are going to look like next game. But I mean, if Bunting is not going to be locked and loaded on that left side, there are many different places he can find himself. And then conversely, you've got a big hole. Do you see a world where Robertson could kind of quickly elevate himself to playing alongside Matthews and Marner, or do you expect he'll be kind of shielded away from that to start?
I mean, anything's possible. And Michael Bunting's kind of put himself in a position here early going where I wouldn't say he's in the doghouse quite yet, but he's definitely not thrilling the coach with his play. And we've seen that. Right. He's taken some penalties. He's mixed some things up, but hasn't been incredibly effective. And then he did score in the Montreal game, but he says he's happy and enjoying and feeling free, but the fact that he was sorely underpaid last year and he's going into a contract here, he's trying to keep up with two of the best players in the sport. There must be a little bit of pressure in his head going into this year. He's got to find that line where he's not taking penalties, where he's drawing penalties but not embellishing. Remember, he got slapped with an embellishment fine last year.
Oh, I remember.
The opposition, the officials, everyone's a little more hip to Michael Bunting's style of play this year. So he has to calm down, find his groove, and find that line. Nick Robertson, there's a chance, right? Like, if things are going south, Keefe has never hesitated to throw his lines in the blender. I think in a perfect world, you have a different kind of presence on that line, guy who's just all about getting the puck, getting to the net. I don't know if there's enough, plays to have so many triggermen on that line. I like Nick Robertson being a primary shooter on another line.
Well, that's the thing with Bunting for me, Luke, is he seems to have forgotten himself a little bit. And almost before the season, you could feel Sheldon Keefe that there was some pushback to this. It's like Bunting thought it was like, me, Austin, and Mitch, we're the first line. And everyone was like, no, it's Austin and Mitch, and you're on the line, like for now. So, it does feel like they're reminding him of his place a little bit, eh?
Well, they shouldn't have put him in that Tim Hortons commercial.
That's what it was. It's all the big boys in Bunting.
What's his head?
Well, that font of personality, John Tavares, I don't know if he would have highlighted it quite as well. Yeah.
Fair enough. So then, the other guys that we have been kicking around here, quite literally, the elite players, what have you made of their initial play? Sheldon Keefe says they weren't elite players. Austin Matthews has a goal and an assist for two points in 4 games. I don't know. Tavares has been good. What do you think of the big 4 forwards that the Leafs lean so heavily on?
Yeah, I think there's another level. They just haven't dominated. They haven't had that game where they explode for 6 goals or the power play goes off 2 or 3 times. Like Sidney Crosby's already had some signature games. Connor McDavid started the season with a signature game. We haven't had that moment yet for these guys, and I think it's coming. Like, I think Mitch has been amazing with the puck most nights. Needs to get to the inside a little bit more. You could tell there was emotion when he finally did score his first goal of the season. I think that probably felt like a relief to him the other night. I actually think John Tavares has quietly done very well, especially when you consider that he came back a week earlier than originally projected from his oblique injury. I think he's been solid. I mean, his game is never the flashiest to begin with. And I think William Nylander is actually buzzing. Like, he's had a breakaway in every single game. He could have more goals than he already does. And I believe he already has 3. Like, he's shooting it in the net. I think it's just the fact that it's come in bits and bursts, and there hasn't been that Austin Matthews game yet, right? Like, we were talking more about his hits than his goals, and the only goal he did score, the fans thought Giordano scored it. You had to really look at the replay to see that he got a tip on it. So he's firing. He's spending most of his time in the O zone. The breakthrough game, it just hasn't happened yet, but I'm sure it will.
All right, Luke. Well, we really appreciate your time today, man. Thanks for joining us, and good luck in all those Leaf scrums this year.
Oh, yeah. Let's keep the controversy spinning.
That's right. You're doing a great job. Thanks, Luke.
Okay. All right. Bye.
Yeah.
That breakout game is going to happen tomorrow night. I'll be in the building.
That's the Dallas Stars, who have allowed
3 goals.
1 goal per game.
Yeah, hey, they're due. They're due for a stinker. No, I have no idea. But that's what the players need. That's what the team needs. And man, that's what this fan base needs. They need the beatdown. They do. Okay. Well, here's the polar opposite ends of it. Me and Sam McKee.
Well, no, I just
disagree.
No, I just think that every time that we were in the building for 2 years or 3 years, or however long I did the Leafs job, they didn't win a lot. So I don't know if you go.
I don't know. I feel like I had a great record last year. I was there for 50. I feel like I was there for lots of big moments.
That's
Matthews Hattie. Yeah, I was there for a bunch.
But I was there
for
crazy.
a bunting Hattie.
It is crazy. Like, Luke tried to class it up and not say, the word I'll say, but like, they've played 4 dogs, boys.
Yeah.
Dogs.
Terrible.
Bad teams.
Really, really bad.
Maybe,
Among the worst.
I guess the Caps may be fine. They'll sort it out, but they haven't been healthy and, looked like dogs. And the most, Bunting has 2 even strength points. Nylander has 2. Riley has 2. Yarncroc 2. Tavares 2. Like, no one has any real sort of point total. For Matthews to have that against these 4 teams is really baffling. Usually it's like, he started with his wrist last year. He's got an injury or something, but it has been disappointing. And so that's why I think it justified us talking about Sheldon Keefe walking back the comments, because it should be like, our best guys haven't been our best guys. And that's the end of the conversation because they haven't been.
It's infuriating that it became such a thing because, again, you can slice it any way you want, apparently outside of Corsi. That is still very good for the Big Four. But did you watch the Arizona game? I did. I know you did.
Yeah.
They didn't look like, outside of the first 11 minutes, which they didn't really generate much in the way of shots, where they carried the puck around. And that's the frustrating thing to me is this team has 2 or 3 of the bad games. They have the game where they completely do not show up and then score 1 at the end of the second period and then get life going into the third and then rally and win in the third. That's frustrating in and of itself. But they also have what happened in that Arizona game where they play pretty well to start things out and 1 doesn't go in. And they feel, and I don't think they sit there going, we were jobbed, we deserve 1 there. But it looks like when it doesn't go in, when they play that well in the first 10 minutes, the game just kind of goes away from them a little bit. And that's the frustrating part.
Yeah, I don't know if it was yesterday or if it was.
What's that say about them?
Well, exactly.
Well, yeah, or it might have been last night.
Part.
But I've said this a number of times about this team. When they control the play and they don't score is when it all goes wrong for the Leafs. Instead of being able to say it's working and sustain it, stay on the right side of the puck, keep pushing, they start to take more chances. They start to say, okay, well, we're this close if I just do this. And then you get an overtime in Game 6 of the playoffs where they dominate, and then the other team goes one way and scores. Or they get it in the Montreal series where they dominate, and then fast rush, odd man rush goals over and over and over. And it seems to be for years now that their ability to stick with it when it's not going in the net is not great. And so I don't know how you get them to do that.
Well, we talk about all the lessons learned, and it feels like of all the lessons that have allegedly been learned all this time, that's the one that needs to be instilled.
This is where I can't help but think of personnel, and you need some of these people who are hockey obsessives, like the weird guys like Zach Hyman, who in game 70, or 57 still care and hit and go to the net. Like guys who just like play that way without having to be told. You know, the Leafs have a ton of talent, but none of these guys, whether it's Engvall or Kerfoot or Yarncroc or Kampf or Tavares or Nylander, none of them are naturally dialed to just be killers. Anyway, we will talk plenty
You're saying
more.
Engvall in there? It's like, yeah, he's kind of the poster child for that. He looks great. He's cruising around, but he just a little more.
There's a great clip the Leafs shared of they were asked the question just like on their way to the rink, who's your favorite person to sit by on the plane?
Saw this.
And everyone listed a guy or a reason, or they banged it out pretty funny. And Engvall was like, and then he keeps walking. He goes, I don't know. And then Riley's right behind him, goes, weird. Engvall didn't know, weird. You know, like this is the guy he is. Like that he's always just kind of in the clouds. They call him Zoolander sometimes, apparently.
Well, he's a weapon.
He is.
Yeah, well, sure.
Guy's a tall. I'm just as tall as him, by the way. I saw him outside the rink one time. Looked eye to eye. So.
Yeah, that's
Same
great.
height.
And then you're a fine-looking guy.
Same body. Too.
Oh, yeah, exactly the same.
All right, we got to get out of here because when we get back, we're going to talk to David Amber. Him and I have
That guy and Engvall have the exact same
You know
body.
what? You know what? DA definitely outbenches Engvall.
Amber has a better bod than Engvall, no doubt.
I'm going to ask him what he benches when we get back. All right, we're going to go to break. When we come back, more real Kyper and Bourne and Gunning. Good job, bud. Yeah.
This is Real Kyper and Bourne on Sportsnet 590 The Fan.
Welcome back to Real Kyper, Gunning, Bourne, McKee, Brandeo, Rolnick, Sportsnet in general. We've got a whole bunch of people that work hard to bring you this program. So thanks for joining us today.
And the Stars need to step up. They're not at their best. No, Nick, that does not mean you. Please, I want to come back. Please. It was just a little Sheldon Keefe humor. That's all that was.
You're good. You're good to go. Yeah.
For sure?
Nick can't hear you.
He's not going to punch
It's fine.
me.
He's at his 38th alumni event this year. I'm not sure what alumni he's with today, but he is not here. But who is here is David Amber, the host of Monday Night Hockey here at Sportsnet. We'll start by saying hello to DA. How you doing, fella?
Hey, JB, how are you? You already missed me? I was with you last night.
I know. I do miss you. I'm very excited that you happen to join us today. And, I did want to get you to explain to everyone, what's going on with Monday Night Hockey. I'm excited for you. It's a big show. You got a new panel, little bit of a different, I think, purpose for how to bring hockey to people. What's going on Mondays?
Yeah, we're really excited about it. I think it's an opportunity to present the game really opinion-based, debate-based, conversation-based presentation of the games. We're going to still analyze the games. We have a great players panel. That's what makes it really exciting. It's Cassie Campbell-Pascal, Anson Carter, and Keith Yandel. And it's really cool, especially to have Keith there, simply because he's such a new voice to, hockey broadcasting. And he's just, months away from retiring. I mean, he's still the reigning NHL all-time Iron Man, which is a pretty cool thing to have a guy with that resume on the set with you to really give their take, again, how the players think and how they feel and, what's it like to be in these situations. And that's what we're really trying to glean from all of them. So to me, it's a really exciting opportunity and a really good group. David Azuma's our producer, does a great job, and Kathy Broderick's there as well. And she helps kind of keep us on in line of all the games we're watching and to know all the storylines. And I think that's what we're going to try and do it in a fun, personable way. We're going to have a lot of guests. We had Chris Pronger, we had Shane Doan for our inaugural show, and we're going to have more guests along the way and hopefully do something that people find entertaining and informative and they enjoy.
Yeah, that was great, DA. I thoroughly enjoyed the first edition. Leafs results aside, I would have liked if you. I don't know if you have any sway in that. If you could have maybe changed that for me, I would have much more enjoyed that. I was listening to the 32 Thoughts podcast, and Jeff and Friedge were kind of killing you for being Captain Canada, loving all the Canadian teams. So I figure you're the best guy to ask. I guess the Canucks are the team we should be panicking about the most, but boy, oh boy, there's a lot of panic here, and I think there might be a little in Edmonton as well. Some Canadian teams not off to the hot start, and apparently that would worry you, David Amber.
Well, Brent, my first question to you is, why are you listening to the 32 Thoughts podcast?
It's a great question. You really spun that one back around on me. Good job by you.
You have no social life? I mean, what is going on here?
No, I don't. Just so we're perfectly clear, I watch the Leafs, I chase my kid around, and then I go to work. That's about it.
You know what's funny? I say this to Elliot a lot. I say one of my only claims to fame is I have never listened to the 32 Thoughts podcast, and it's not. And that is not. And and you know what's funny? And I love Jeff Merrick. And I listen to Jeff Merrick's show quite a bit, and I love Elliot, obviously, and I work with Elliot a lot. But I don't listen to any hockey podcast. I listen to your guys live on the air. I don't source it out. I just need to have a bit of space. So I'm digging myself into a hole here, but I don't listen to a lot of hockey podcasts is what I'm trying to say. But bottom line is, to your question, yeah, well, sorry, what was your question?
Canadian teams and
panicking. Obviously, the Canucks are the worst. Leafs, Oilers, where are we at?
Yeah, I mean, listen, the Canucks, man, I just feel so badly for that team. We had Dan Murphy on Hockey Central last night with Justin Bourne and Mike Fuda, and JB, you heard him. My first thing was like, wow, we're 8 days in, and it just seems like the world is collapsing. And he's like, 8 days, it feels like 8 months. And I'm sure for those players, it really does right now. I'm trying to take a measured approach to this. To lose 4 games in a row on the road when you had multi-goal leads in every game, it's really unfathomable on some levels. But having said that, the season's not lost. There's a lot of hockey left to be played. If things start to go south, I think a lot of people might question the makeup of the team, because we all said wow, we love the goalie, Thatcher Demko. We love the forward group, specifically the top six. What they need is a bit more depth forward groups, and most clearly they need more depth and more quality on their blue line. And was that addressed to its fullest? Arguably it wasn't. So Vancouver, there's certainly some question marks. Toronto, and we touched on this, and Mike Futa really leaned in on it last night, sort of saying, the lack of pushback, and they have a guy like Wayne Simmons who's on their roster but not getting on the ice, and he's not putting this all on Simmons, but just the idea that you don't have a ton of pushback. We watched Ilya Lyubushkin last night absolutely destroy Holloway with a very clean but very hard hit. And to not have Lyubushkin this year, and now to have lost Jake Muzzin, that blue line doesn't have that element, that physical element that you might want. And Mark Giordano clearly will get into trenches, and guys aren't afraid. It's more just, it's not the best part of their blue line, right, essentially, or the biggest part. So there's definitely some questions in the Canadian market. You can do the glass half empty or glass half full, though, right? Calgary looks like one of the best teams in the NHL right now, if not the best team. Starting out 3-0, and Edmonton clearly has a dynamic team, and even the Jets are a team to keep an eye on, as is Ottawa.
No, it's true. It's interesting. It was interesting listening to Futs last night talk about the Leafs, how, Leafs saying the Leafs had it figured out. They had Bogosian and they had all these, sort of more physical guys, and they didn't stick with that plan because Tavares got hurt and a playoff series was lost. Today, DA, we wake up and we hear that Sheldon Keefe is walking back his quotes, his criticism of the elite players. What are your thoughts on what's going on in Toronto here? I guess Sheldon Keefe's pressure, some people saying the players, they're too soft on the players. What do you think about where things are at here in Toronto?
Well, maybe Sheldon, he probably looked at the calendar and said, I'm not sure I want to use that bullet on night 3 of the NHL season. The elite players aren't playing elite for him. I mean, we see that, has Austin Matthews gotten off to a great start? No. Has Mitch Marner been dynamic? He's been great at times, but he hasn't been maybe what the expectations are. And quite frankly, the Leafs need that core 4 to be dynamic most nights, right? That's going to come down to that. And every team can say that. Last night, McDavid and Draisaitl didn't light it up, and Edmonton lost to Buffalo. So what Sheldon Keefe said is true. I think he wants to, insulate his team, and maybe he would be like, this is a conversation I can have in closed doors. I don't need to have it in the public. And if Kyper were on the show today, he'd probably be saying that. I'm not sure Austin Matthews or the players want to hear that put out into the media, right? It's funny, though. I appeared on a show a few hours. In fact, it was Tim and Sid a couple hours before the Leafs game against Arizona, and Faisal Kamiza was in for Tim and said, what are you expecting from the Leaf? Like, what are your expectations for this Leaf game tonight? And I said, I want a blowout. Like, this is the blowout game.
Right.
This is everyone get the cookies, feel good about themselves. We see the juggernaut in action. Matthews lights it up, and all the guys light it up. And, Arizona had allowed 48 shots per game in their first 2 games. And the Leafs, even though they had all that great Corsi numbers and possession time and all the rest, at one point, like 12 minutes in, they had 3 shots on goal. And I'm going, man, what's going on here? So I think we're all waiting for that moment, that big, wow, this is that team we expected, and we haven't got there yet.
Yeah, I keep going back to it, and I do think that's what it's going to take to kind of, I want to say turn around the season. Like, it's way too early for that, but that does what feel like can give them the kind of boost they need to get running the way this team is wholly capable of. You work in the Oilers game last night. You mentioned that massive hit. We were talking about that. I'm trying to think of the last time I've seen anybody smoked open ice like that. Like, Jacob Trouba has 2, 3, 4 massive hits a year, but they aren't just these north-south open ice. Like, I go back to like Ovechkin smoking Yager at the Olympics to try to think of the last time I saw that. It's just so rare to see in today's game, David.
It is. We long for the days, the Nick Cronwalls who would just line up guys and destroy them. I mean, Mo Sider's got a little bit of that in him. He can deliver some big hits, but you're right. They're few and far between. The players are so fast. The game has changed to some degree. And if you lay a hit like that, like Lyubushkin got up from that hit, he also went down. It was such a big hit. Right away, he basically almost had the gloves off because he knew someone was going to come and, say, let's fight. I think it was Warren Fogle who came into the defense of Holloway. So, yeah, I miss that element of the game. I don't care the fighting, neither here nor there to me, but the big open ice hits, the physical punishment. And when you do see a hit like we saw from Lyubushkin last night, it does make you go, wow, I forgot that could be such an important element to the game.
Yeah, that was a large one, and one, would be nice to see here in Toronto, but you can't keep all the toys with the salary cap the way it is. Ottawa has has had salary cap room, and for the first time made an effort to use it this offseason. They bring in Giroux, DeBrincat. They don't win a couple right away, but last night, home opener, 19,000 people. They win 7-5 over the Bruins. If nothing else, are fun to watch now. What are your thoughts on the transition in Ottawa, what they've become here and, over a couple of years?
Pierre Dorion had a fantastic offseason, I thought. I think he's been really pushing this team in the right direction, not just locking down the Stutzlas and the Kachucks and, obviously Shabbat's locked down. He's got the foundation pieces locked down for long term. I think he's changed the whole mood of the city, the hockey fans in that city. There's now optimism for the first time in a number of years. Pierre Dorion, the day they traded Erik Karlsson, I have this little geeky binder where I keep all my notes. He said the word rebuilding 21 times in that press conference. Go back and watch it. And that was just 4 or 5 years ago. And I don't think you're going to hear the R word from him too much anymore because they're not rebuilding. He got the foundational pieces, and I think Brady Tkachuk was very clear. We need more, and he said, "I'm going to get you more." And what did he do? He went out. He got DeBrincat, got Giroux. Yeah, they still need a lot more on the blue line, but it's funny watching Shane Pinto score 2 goals last night, or score his second of the season, I should say, last night. A guy like Pinto is a coveted kind of guy that you might be able to move to get a Jacob Chychrun. You're going to have to make some type of decision. You're going to have to solidify that blue line. But I really like the core pieces there and the fact they surrounded them with some guys who've been in winning situations, certainly in Claude Giroux. I like what we're seeing in Ottawa. And last night, by the way, guys, on a bigger picture, I'm watching the games with Mike Fuda, and it was one of the wildest nights in the NHL that I can remember. 5 different teams blew 2+ goal leads and lost the game. Ottawa blew a 3-goal lead, but they won the game. But 5 other teams blew 2-goal leads and lost the game. It was nuts. And, it's cool that we have that much parity in the league, and we also have, teams playing on a bit more offensive level, right? Last year was the most goals we've seen since, I think, 96, and this year might exceed last year, so it's really exciting.
I hope that can keep up because, we know every coach in the league is saying, now you got to stop that. We cannot have these high-flying games, and you definitely can't have blowing leads. But, yeah, it's always kind of a mix between what the coaches want to see and what makes an entertaining product. And those things aren't always polar opposite from each other, but a lot of times they are. Just picking up on what you said about Ottawa there, it did kind of feel like the turning of a leaf for them last night. Alfie's there, and they're saying it feels like a playoff atmosphere, and you got Tkachuk, and everybody's in the lineup, and it's the home opener. It's amazing how a few moves and bringing back a franchise icon, yes, Dorion did great work this summer, and no one's trying to take anything away from him, but and not tweaks, because Giroux, DeBrincat, these are important guys, but they are the guys that are there to help the existing core, and then just adding a little Alfredson sprinkle into the mix, it just kind of changes the whole feel of the night and makes it feel like they're starting anew. And, obviously Melnick and the ownership change or passing out of his hands anyways is kind of played into that as well. But it's amazing how new, fresh season and things can just feel all new again there.
I was so pleased, Brent, to see Daniel Alfredson, the opening puck. The ovation for him was fantastic. And, if you were to survey the average Ottawa Senator fan, the favorite all-time Ottawa Senator is probably Daniel Alfredson. And he means so much to that team. He lives in the community. He's still there. And the fact that he now feels welcome to come back to the rink, and maybe that bridge has been, fixed, that was there. And that's great. He's a great ambassador to the team and really a figurehead for that franchise and what they've meant to the NHL. To have him back does sort of signify maybe, we're turning over a new leaf and we're into a new era with this franchise. And the fact that they've gone from sellers to now buyers is really exciting. And if they can just get the wheels in motion, get this rink situation settled, if they ever can get a rink, into Ottawa proper, which is obviously the goal, right, it will really be sensational. I've been there and it's fun, but it is out in Canada, and it's a schlep for a lot of people to get out there. But that market area is electric at night, and there's a lot of – they don't have the legion of fans the way the Leafs do or most of the Canadian markets. It's a smaller city, but they have diehard fans who are very passionate about the team, and I feel good for them now that you can look at this team and you can be pretty damn excited. I mean, the foundational pieces that are there are pretty good, and I say the same thing for Detroit. I'm excited for the future of Detroit. You looked at Buffalo last night. You know, it's funny, that Atlantic division, it might kind of flip over in the next 5 years where the top-heavy teams, the Bostons, the Tampas, et cetera, might be working their way maybe down the standings, and those bottom feeders might be moving their way up the standings. So it's pretty cool.
I noticed that you said the Bostons and the Tampas, and you didn't mention the Torontos on the Leaf show. That was a savvy call.
I'm no fool. No, well, yeah, I know I didn't, but I mean, look at the age of Boston's star players, you know, and listen, this Pastrnak thing is no joke. Like, it's going to take. I don't think you're going to get the typical Don Sweeney. Well, you know, Bergeron's only making this much, so you're going to slot in. Like, he had that for a long time. We saw with McAvoy's contract. I think that day is over. It won't shock me if Pastrnak wants to become the highest-paid winger in the league. You know, Panarin's exceptional, and he makes 11.6. Pasternak's going to say, show me the money. And in Boston, if they're not prepared to show him the money, you know, if they lose Pastrnak, that is a massive, massive hole, knowing the age of Bergeron and Marchand, et cetera. So, you know, we'll wait and see. I'm not trying to, you know, bring their demise before
Feel free to. I have no problem with it.
They're still a formidable team, but, you know, 2-3 years from now, unless the right dominoes fall into place, let's see where the Bruins are. In Tampa, you know, I'll never sleep on a team that has Vasilevsky and Hedman and Kucherov and Stamkos. Mm-hmm. By the way, Stamkos, oh my God. And I know Kipper's a massive fan of his.
I know.
How good a story is that, guys? Right? Like, remember the injuries 4 or 5 years ago? You're like, I wonder if that's it for him. Like, literally, a lot of people weren't saying that loudly, but there was whispers like, "Ooh, you know, these are devastating injuries." And what has he done since then? You know, the 2 Stanley Cups, 106 points last year, one of his best offensive seasons. He's closing in on 500 goals. He's closing in on 1,000 points. It's an incredible story, and he's right now looking, you know, like one of the top players in the league. It's fantastic.
It is fantastic, and it's fantastic that you've joined us, and I'm excited about your new show, and thanks for coming on today, DA. We appreciate it.
Guys, anytime. I really appreciate it. I always love working with you, Bourne. Get you on TV. You're a little too handsome for my liking because, you know.
We'll just start doing the show shirtless, and people, they'll pick a preference to you pretty quick. Don't worry, buddy.
Oh, Lord. All right. Be well, fellas. Thanks for having me on.
Thank you. David Amber.
I'm happy the way that
hockey.
turned. And it's all true, but there's too much sense positivity, and I know I led them there. I didn't like that. It's all true. Like, no lies were spoken. I'm happy we can move on to other things like Pastrnak ringing the bell and no longer being a Bruin, and then just general Stamkos respect. Always.
I actually wrote a little bit today, like my 10 preseason reactions. I mentioned that earlier. One of them is that Pastrnak is going to cost them $1 bajillion. He is.
I'd love to see
26 years old. He had 40 goals last year in his sleep, missing 10 games. He has a Rocket Richard trophy already. He's dangling. He's got 8 points in 4 games this year. He's like, you look at Nathan McKinnon, just got 12.6. Pastrnak was also wildly underpaid for years. He's been making $6 million, 6.6 or something like that. So he's owed little back pay too. You cannot convince me he's getting paid less than Mitch Marner or Austin Matthews. No, right now, I think he's going to make $11 million easily per season.
You think?
I do.
I don't know.
Well, so, okay.
What's the case against giving him Panarin money?
So this isn't the case against it. And these
what does Panarin make? Does he make
11?
Oh, he does?
I think he's like 11.
Oh, well, then for sure then.
Yeah. Well, because the only way that this goes differently, and I think that some people would point to, now these are completely different circumstances, guys older, is what happened.
11-6.
What just happened with Nazem Kadri. Now, as a guy who's coming off a career year, but I think a big reason that Jonathan Huberdeau signed the deal he did with the Flames is because he saw what happened with Nazem Kadri and said, I don't want to be sitting here waiting for musical chairs and saying, I need a good team to play on that has a $10 million hole in their cap to fit me in. So that's the only
Kadri's 32.
No.
Pastrnak has 6 seasons before that.
I completely understand that, but I think that a part of the reason why Huberdeau jumped at the chance is I don't want to be sitting here playing musical chairs and having to take a chair that I don't necessarily want to go to. So I'm not saying he's not going to get the money, but I think that there are some people a touch gun shy of getting to UFA because of what happened, I wonder.
Yeah. Yeah, no, that's fair. You know, I do think another thing in Pasternak's favor, though, is what Gary Bettman said yesterday, which is something I'm glad to bring up now.
Please.
Natural seg as the host here, no big deal. Gary Bettman yesterday announces that, well, I don't know if he announced it or Elliot reported it. I don't know where it came from, whatever. That the NHL the escrow could be paid back to the owners this season, and the cap could go up $4 million next season.
That's massive.
Massive.
I want to thank Commissioner Gary Batman and for
Who's that?
That was Biden.
That's Biden.
Gary Batman.
Gary Batman. Love it. Old
It's
Joe.
it's no
Old Joe.
Steve. It's no
Scotty's
Steve
old.
Azerman.
He's just so Simmons is old. He can't go home because he hates his wife.
It's no Steve Azerman. It's pretty
Steve
good though.
Azerman. Yeah, that was a good one too. But you know, $4 million is significant news for the Toronto Maple Leafs.
Massive. Your Labushkin point. There it is, right there.
You,
Done.
you can keep players like, you know, including the raises that are due in not too distant future to Matthews and Nylander.
That's, to me, it's not even really worth talking about. $4 million for the Leafs.
This is the dumbest response
I
I've
cannot
ever heard.
believe
Earlier before the
this.
show, he
I
said it
cannot
doesn't
believe
matter
this.
that the cap would
It
go
doesn't,
$4 million. It
because
means
it's just
everything.
It's just
Every
going to well, how much more is it going to cost them to sign Matthews per year?
If it costs $4 million
but-
more, you get to keep your team.
But they're still going to have to get rid of all these guys that, like, they're probably not going to be able to
No,
re-sign.
they won't.
They're-
This is literally the difference between keeping your
I don't
team
know.
and not.
To me,
And
it
if it
doesn't make
goes
a
up
difference.
$4 million this year, that doesn't mean it's going to take another big leap after that. But once the
Should be
once
four
the
again.
once the back pay of escrow is paid off, then we're back to normal business here. So I agree, McKee. I understand what you're saying. Of that money is just going to get
Go
earmarked.
to Matthews.
Yeah. Okay. Great. You
He's
have the
going to
money.
make $15 million a year.
Great. You have the money.
And
to
if it doesn't
play
go
the-
up, then you have to trade everyone else.
exactly.
Yes.
I cannot believe this.
Now you get to keep your players.
But
That's not news.
it's news, no doubt. It's news, but I think $4 million is just going to get allocated, and they're just going to have the same bottom six that they always do. A bunch of guys that they just bring in and
Well,
out.
that's
And it's just
fine.
going to look the exact same as
That's
it always
fine
does. And it's
because
going to be no different.
if the cap doesn't go up, he's still getting that raise, and then they go, okay, we got to get rid
Oh,
of.
they're just going to pay
Nylander?
these other guys in the bottom. They'll just, bring in some new schlubs for the bottom six that they always do. Just bring in some new guys, and it's going to look exactly
This
the
is
same.
the most
I can't believe this.
nihilistic, nothing matters.
It
like,
doesn't.
no, this is
as long
significant difference.
as long as those four guys are here, the bottom six is just never going to be different. It's always just going to be the same guys that they bring in.
I
and
can
out.
tell you what happens if the cap goes up
Yeah.
1 million instead of 4. It's worse.
Yes.
You know, it's
I guess you're right. It just doesn't move the needle as much as I think you want it to for me.
Well, it definitely isn't for you, but I think for Kyle Dubas, if you say you're either going to have 1 million in cap space or 4, I think it is a big difference in team building and what they're able to do. Not to mention next year, you still have Matthews on this salary. You still have Nylander on this salary. That's actually money you can use for next year's hockey team before those raises kick in, which, now you're talking about adding players, something the Leafs haven't thought about doing in a while. And in talking about adding players, they could use a couple.
They could. Like Calle Yarncroke was the big bet. The fact that that's the big bet, like that kind of says the pool they're swimming around in. And if they had an extra $4 million, all of a sudden it's not that player you're looking at.
I just,
You keep Bunsey versus losing him.
I'd be
We're trying
heartbroken.
to sell McKee. We're trying to sell him here.
I'd just be heartbroken.
We've turned on Bunting?
Not me. Never.
Four games?
Never.
Listen,
Never.
I've never loved him.
Oh, he's
Really?
No.
I'll show you the texts I get during games. And
Not
just
a Bunting guy.
58.
This guy just thinks he's Tucker. It just drives me nuts.
It's tough. I do think he's best with self-awareness. When he knows he's a good third line, second line guy who can score great offensive sense. I think he's a really intelligent
does.
player. Would just happen to be a perfect fit on a team that spent all its money on 4 guys and needs someone cheap to play on the top line.
I think they probably see the attention that Mr. Michael Bunting is getting after his season. And I think they probably are keeping it within the house. They probably have a conversation every so often that Keefe and Dubas are probably like, yeah, maybe bunt them down a little bit here. Maybe
I think so.
he's in
I think
Tim
for
Hortons
sure
commercials.
They said, sorry, who's in the commercial with Nylander and Matthews?
He's in Tim
and
Hortons
Riley?
commercials.
Bunting?
Everybody, he's read his own press clipping. Scarborough guy. I do think there's a little bit to the fact that they got to keep him within his own capabilities.
Yeah, it's a life thing, right?
Yeah, that's
no
fine.
one wants anyone getting too big. for
Pops
the
their head
purse.
up a little bit. You get smacked. We've all been there. We've all been there, and we will
I
all
work
be
with
there
Kyper.
again.
It happens all the time. No, we love him. We love him. But,
Again, I love Michael Bunting more than anybody.
That's right. Okay. Team Bunting over here. We are going to go to break. We're going to talk a little bit more about some of this at the end of the show. Up next, though, we're going to talk with Haley Salvion of Sportsnet. I'm just calling her of Sportsnet. She's on Sportsnet all the time. That's where she should be. She does a terrific job. I look forward to speaking with her, and we will be doing that momentarily after this break.
From the City News 6 City Traffic.
This is Real Kyper and Bourne on Sportsnet 590 The Fan.
Welcome back to Real Kyper, Bourne and Gunning and Rolnick and Brandeo and McKee and Toman. I don't know, everyone else that works here.
Give him some credit, please.
Yeah, does a great job. Really, really nice talking with DA and getting to talk some positive Ottawa Senators things. I know you enjoyed that.
It's okay.
It's
Nice for the people of Ottawa, sure.
It is great.
I have a buddy, and he was there, and I saw him. He was like walking. It looked like he was at the Field of Dreams. You have to like walk through a corn patch wherever he was parked to get to the Senators' barn. And it did look awesome, and I'm happy for that one guy, Nick. If you're out there listening, not Kyper, but my buddy, good for you. But everybody else, I didn't need that. That was too much positive.
Fair enough. The good news is, speaking of positivity, we are now joined by Haley Salvion, national hockey writer for The Athletic, our own co-worker at Sportsnet. Haley, thanks for joining us.
Yeah, no problem. I was going to join you guys in person until I heard that I would need to be there until 5, and I refused to drive home at 5 o'clock.
We might have just been discussing that. Yeah.
That's hilarious. We literally had this conversation. Gunnar lives in Burlington. He's like, yeah, I'll get home by 6, what time? 6:15?
Yeah, something like that. If I'm home,
3 hours
anything earlier than 7 is gravy. So yeah, 2 hours.
Yeah,
maybe.
no.
Well,
I'm halfway home, so thanks for having me.
Next time we'll have you on like 3 o'clock right off the top, so you can join us in studio.
Perfect.
I read your most recent Leafs writing. It was nice to see you doing a little bit of Leafs work too. You know, obviously we are a Leaf show like everyone. I wanted to get your take on what's going on in Leafland these days. Crisis? Do you think they should burn it all down? What are your thoughts?
Well, it's funny you introduced me as, speaking of positivity, I think some Leafs fans are like, wow, who's the new negative Leafs reporter at The Athletic? Because the 2 games that I've really kind of honed in on and wrote about was the 2 losses that the Leafs have had. First one at home, the season opener, against Montreal, and then this last one against Arizona. And, you can only kind of write about what you see, and things haven't been great those 2 games. I think in terms of the overall, I'm one of the ones who thinks everyone needs to maybe take an inhale, take a breath. I don't think Sheldon Keefe is one of the coaches that's on the really, really hot seat to start the season. We know that he's Kyle Dubas's guy, and it's only 4 games in here. But I do think that we need to consider some of the things that might be going wrong early on. Again, keeping in mind that it is really early for the Leafs. The top line hasn't maybe been as effective relative to what we saw from them last year when we're looking at Bunting, Matthews, and Marner. They've been on the ice for 3 goals, 4 at 5-on-5, and 3 against at 5-on-5. So they're pretty much, not a net negative, but they're giving up as much as they're getting for the Leafs. The top guys you want to talk about. If Sheldon Keefe is using his bullets, he's calling out the top guys. He's not necessarily wrong when he's saying that his best players didn't get the job done against Arizona. Mitch Marner got a goal. William Nylander got a goal. I thought Nylander's had a really good start to the season, as much as people maybe have comments or commentary about his defensive game. I think Nylander's been fine. He's had some good goals, but I think you look at Austin Matthews has 1 goal to start the year. John Tavares has 1 goal to start the year. Mitch Marner has 1 goal to start the year. Morgan Riley's been on the ice for 7 goals against for the Toronto Maple Leafs, and Austin Matthews has 1 5-on-5 point. We all know about the cap situation. We all know how this roster is constructed. Some of the depth guys haven't quite been there, save for maybe Kerfoot and Kelly Yarncroke's been okay, but the 4th line mean, they basically got benched against the Arizona Coyotes after starting the game because they were ineffective in all three zones. So if the depth is not going to be there, they need those top guys who are paid to get the job done, and I don't know if we've seen that. I thought the top line was really good and Matthews was really good against Washington. But this is why I say it's early. It's really hard to say all these things and think like, yeah, they're in trouble because Austin Matthews isn't going to shoot under 5% all season. He's had 21 shots on goal, 1 goal. Like, that's not going to happen all year. So, well, I think there's issues, and I mean, Muzzin's out, and you've got the goaltending issues. You're already starting Eric Kallgren because you need to rest Ilya Samsonov because Matt Murray's on LTIR. There's a lot of bad stuff going on in Toronto, so I get some of the panic, but I think we also need to calm down.
Yeah, I was with you until you listed off all those reasons, and now I'm like, no, actually, I think it is big time to panic. No,
these are bad. Yeah.
No, I see what you're saying, because when you look at the Matthews thing, as much as I'm sitting here going, he doesn't look like himself. The shot doesn't. It looks more or less the same, but he's not shooting it in the net. The way he's able to handle the puck, it felt like it was a magnet on his blade last year, and it just hasn't been. But I genuinely think that's all going to figure itself out. He will find his level as the season goes on. But when you mention the decor, you know, Morgan Rielly, he's had a rough start, and it feels like it is always feast or famine with Morgan Rielly. It's, terrible start to the year, signs contract extension. Look at Mo, he's playing great hockey, back to struggling Rielly. Like, it just seems like it's always complete celebration or complete panic, and I don't know that it's wrong or those are overreactions. Muzzin is out for some time. If you read the Marner quotes today, he's talking about if he's back this year. I think that to me is where the real concern is. And, you know, goaltending is what it is, but I don't think we're going to have an answer for, well, hopefully Samsonov can stay healthy and stop some pucks. So what do you make of the decor? Like, do you think that there is a world where this group kind of stabilizes itself and find its way? Or do you have big time concerns as the year goes on?
Well, it's tough, right? Because you're looking at some of the issues that we've seen with Morgan Rielly. As you mentioned, it is that feast or famine, and he's been on the ice for 7 goals against at 5-on-5. I do think you have to look at what his on-ice save percentage has been, too. That's been, I think, I don't have it right in front of me, but I think it's at 80%. And there's been more goals allowed versus the expected goals against when Rielly's on the ice. So some of that can be chalked up to goaltending, and that is going to be one of the big things is, you know, sure, they can try to keep guys to the outside, or they can do their best to block shots and limit high danger chances against. But if you can't get a save, then then defenders are going to be on the ice for a lot of goals against. So I think you have to look at it that way. I think the worry with the blue line for as long as Jake Muzzin's out, and again, you know, we're talking about a player who has not had a perfect start to the season. You know, there's been some goals against that came right off of Jake Muzzin's stick. If you're talking about a failed clear, or he's bobbling the puck, or he's made a mistake in the defensive zone. Him and Justin Hall haven't had a great start to the season as a Leafs second pair. But there is a worry for the Leafs or fans if Jake Muzzin's out for a long period of time, because as long as Muzzin's out, we're looking at a situation with the Leafs where you're either divvying up his ice time to TJ Brodie and Morgan Rielly and 38-year-old Mark Giordano, or you're looking at a second pair that is, you know, Gio Hall, and a third pair that is Rasmus Sandin and Victor Mete, who cleared waivers last week. And I mean, the only reason they had enough money to call him up was because the LTIR room with Matt Murray. So it's a blue line on paper that's not looking great. Can they get them to keep guys the outside and limit attempts against? Sure. But I guess that is the worry. That's the big question. You know, what does the bottom 4 look like on paper, and how do they perform? Again, is Victor Mete going to step up and have a great stretch here with Muzzin out? Are we going to see Hall and Giordano together? Maybe you put Justin Hall in the third pair with Victor Mete, and you kind of give those guys mostly offensive zone shifts and shelter them and play them a little bit less, and then you keep Giordano and Rasmus Sandin, who've been okay on the third pair. I think Gio's fine. I'm a really big fan of what he provides. I think he's a really good, steady defender despite people bringing up his age, even though I just did that. So maybe your top four is TJ Brody and Morgan Riley and Mark Giordano and Rasmus Sandin, and you kind of bury that third pair. I'm not sure what they're going to do in the long run or how long Muzzin's out, but I think there are some concerns when you're looking at the Leafs from the back end and out when you're looking at the blue line and the goaltending.
Bleak, very bleak. I share your ability to, we have to talk about this stuff and it's not positive, right? So I get a lot of that in my Twitter feed too, that being too negative. I understand where you're coming from. One of the things that is positive is another team that you talk about fairly often, the Calgary Flames. Their D-core significantly better, I would say, than the Toronto Maple Leafs. Off to a pretty good start in Calgary. Does it look like this will be a team that's better than last season's version?
Yeah, and I think when you're talking about the negativity, I do feel bad because I don't know.
You're a truth speaker.
Tell it like you see it.
I don't know. I'm sorry. I'm really not trying to be negative.
No, you're not.
Yeah. I think that is the big picture question when you're looking at the Calgary Flames, right? This is a very different team, a different version of the Flames, and the big question from the summer on has been, are they better? And I've been kind of consistent. I think that the Flames are going to take a step back in certain ways. You're not going to have a top line that scores 71 goals at 5-on-5. They might not have the best top line in the league this season, but I think the Flames are going to be better in ways that are important when it matters the most. I think they are a team that's better constructed top to bottom this season. We talk about that top line. I think there was a lot of times last season where I was writing about how they need more consistent secondary scoring when I was on the Flames beat, and how it can't always be Johnny Gaudreau and Elias Lindholm and Matthew Tkachuk scoring the big goals and winning the Flames hockey games, because there was a lot of times when that was the case. And I thought last night against Vegas was kind of the perfect example of this team being better in those ways. The top line did not score. They have not scored at 5-on-5 yet this season, off to a 3-0 start for Calgary against some pretty big Western Conference contenders in Colorado, Edmonton, and Vegas. We're talking about a group that's 3-0 with the top line that hasn't scored at 5-on-5 yet. And I thought last night, the fourth line was really good. There was some perfect fourth line ozone shifts by Brett Ritchie and Kevin Rooney and Milan Lucic. They drew 4 penalties in the second period, 4 of the 6 penalties that Vegas took. And then the top guys came out in the top power play, and you see Toffoli and Lindholm score on those opportunities. And it's Michael Backlund who gets the game winner. So we're looking at a game one against what many people think is going to be a Western Conference playoff team again in Vegas. If they can stay healthy, that's a game one based on their bottom 6 having a really good game and the power play finishing it off. And I don't know if last season we would have said that against a team like Vegas. It would have been Johnny Gaudreau winning the game on his stick, or Tkachuk doing something, or Markstrom stealing the game. So I think last night was a great example of the Flames being better and deeper and more impactful up and down the lineup. And I do think that their blue line is very, very good. I think they've got when it's all said and done, once the chemistry's there, I think they will have 2 top pairs. I think Tanev and Weegar maybe still working it out. They've been on the ice for some goals against, but Uyghur's in a new system. Tanev's with a new D pair. He's playing with a right shot guy next to him, which is different than the last couple of years for him. But I think once they start working that out, you're going to have Hannafin and Anderson as a top pair, and you're going to have Tanev and Uyghur with the ability to do that as well. And they've got really good goaltending in Markstrom and Dan Vladar. So I think the Flames are looking pretty good this year. I think they will be better when it matters.
Yeah, I agree with all that, man. You mentioned the bottom 6 winning them a game, to make it all about the Leafs all the time here. David Kamp's line didn't win this team games, but he allowed Austin Matthews and those guys to go win them games. Like the way they utilized that third checking line, it was just such a force at times for them, and they haven't found it here. Haley, you're kind of the perfect person to ask about this because, Sheldon Keefe, I think it's fair to say, or at least the way things have played out, that maybe he stepped in it a little bit, criticizing his star players after the loss to the Arizona game. Today, he kind of walks back some of those comments. And in my mind, I immediately drew a line to Sutter in Calgary. Now, granted, Sutter has accomplished a ton in this league, and I think that gives you a lot more rope to say some things. But, man, he is very critical, not tiptoeing around it, not saying, oh, my players could have been better, saying, well, he's not good. What was the quote he had about Sean Monahan's 500th game? I hope it's better than 499. This is a guy who is blunt and critical when he needs to be. And just what do you think it is about Sutter that allows him to be that way? Do you think it's some of the markets he's operated in? Do you think it's his aw shucks demeanor? Do you think what he's accomplished? Is it a mix of all of those? What is it about him?
Yeah, I remember that. It was Johnny Gaudreau.
Oh, Gaudreau, okay.
Yeah.
Even worse,
that
actually.
Was one of the ones where you're like, oh my. No, you know what? I know that there is, I think a lot of people like to watch the Daryl Sutter press conferences and laugh when he's got that bite and he's being really short. Because he can be really feisty, and he will send a message through the media when he wants to. And that's the thing with Daryl is he's not going to go there if he does not want to. You could ask Daryl a question and he won't even acknowledge what you asked, and he will say what he wants to talk about. Sometimes he'll just shut you down. Sometimes he'll go there. It's all about the messaging that he wants to get across. And I think the thing with Daryl that maybe I don't even want to say allows that to happen, because again, he's gonna do what he wants. He's a winning coach. He's a proven coach. I don't think you're ever going to hear anything through the media that the player isn't already aware of right from the horse's mouth. I think that's the one thing when you talk to players that have played for Daryl Sutter, whether you appreciate what he brings, whether they hated playing for Daryl, you always know where you stand with Daryl Sutter. It's very, very black and white. So if Daryl Sutter is telling me tomorrow that he thinks Blake Coleman needs to be better, Blake Coleman knows it because Daryl told him first. You know what your role is. You know where you stand. You know where you need to be better. You know what you need to do. And that's the thing that, across the board I've heard from players. It's pretty easy to know what you're supposed to do night in and night out when you play for Daryl Sutter, because he makes it very, very clear. So I think that's it. I think the fact that he is a winning coach, that he is a proven coach, he gets results. Is part of it. I think he's the guy that, the Calgary Flames knew that they needed to bring him in because he can push the right buttons. He gets the best out of his players based on, what he knows they need to do, what it takes to win in terms of systems and individual play. I mean, the Flames are a really good puck possession team. They're a team that's going to thrive on the fork check. They're going to thrive in terms of being really good defensively. You think of the perfect Daryl Sutter teams. You think of the LA Kings. He's blunt. They're a suffocating team at their best to play against under Daryl. So I think the fact that people have seen what he does work is what makes all of that. I don't even want to say okay, because I'm sure there's people who have played for Daryl who've seen the things in the media and go, God, I hate that, or that's embarrassing, or that sucks. I'm sure of it. Because, it's not fun to get grilled. I think anybody can speak to that, whatever their job is. But, it works. And I will say again, if Daryl's saying it to the media, that guy probably heard it from Daryl, either right after or before.
All right. Well, we appreciate your insight on all this. It's good to get the cross-team view of things. So thanks so much, Haley. Appreciate your time.
Go write some more negative stuff about the Leafs now.
I'm trying. I'm not trying to. I don't know.
Thanks so much. We appreciate it.
It was a fun game. Thanks, guys.
Yeah. I am fascinated by the idea of a power imbalance between coaches and players. You talk about Daryl Sutter, and those guys would have heard it from the horse's mouth. And
probably standing next to a horse's mouth.
I was going to say maybe literally a horse, perhaps cattle, knowing Daryl. But it is fascinating because you have other coaches, and obviously Sheldon Keefe is the relevant party here that we're discussing. But I think of when Jeremy Colleton was handed the Chicago Blackhawks. Right. So, Joel Quenneville's out.
Yep.
Kane and Taves have 3 Stanley Cups each. Jeremy, I think he's younger than me. We played on the same team in the American League.
I remember
he's
a lot of
38
about how
or
young
something.
he is. Yes.
Yeah. And so he goes in to be the coach, and they're like, "Who the hell are you?"
No.
Yeah, you're not in charge. This is our show.
You can stand back there if you want.
And in fairness to Taves and Kane, it's their show.
Yeah.
So, when Sheldon Keefe comes in and these guys have their contracts and their superstars and the promise of glory that came with Matthews and Marner.
Boy, did it.
There's a power where it's not a power imbalance necessarily. It's just a differently placed power.
Yep, totally. I know exactly what you're getting at there. And that's the this is one of the things that, and people roll their eyes when I say this stuff all the time, but this is a classic example of it being true. It is harder to do certain things in a market like Toronto. I think the idea of Toronto's a hard market to play in is a touch overstated, but it is something like this where these comments, if they are in 29 other markets, I don't know, maybe that's not even enough. It's a nothing burger. And we kind of got there today where eventually, okay, this is probably a little overstated. But we did have the, 5-hour news cycle about it or whatever it was. And for a guy like Sheldon Keefe, who is still learning to be a coach at this level, and I would imagine he would tell you that. He is accomplished. He knows he's an NHL coach now, but much as he wants his players to get better every day, I imagine he wants to get better every day. And I think that those are still times where 1 or 2 times a season, to go back to the New York comments from last year, where it's just a little different here, and you have to be maybe a touch more careful depending on the gravitas or the tenure that you have in a place.
Yeah, and I get that with the market. I'm fascinated by the idea of like, how easy is it to implement your message if you're not the person with the most power? Like, if Sheldon went to Brendan Shanahan, Kyle Dubas, and said, Mitch Marner's got to go, or if Mitch Marner went to those two guys and said, Sheldon Keefe has to go, which one of them is more likely to get their way?
Yeah, it's Marner.
It's Marner.
100% it's Marner.
So
it probably should be.
And it probably should be. That's fine.
Yep.
But if you look at a lot of other markets where if it's Daryl Sutter, or if it's, I go through the list of NHL coaches,
Cooper.
thinking in Cooper, exactly, in Tampa Bay, and you think of some guys like that, they have the authority, they have the power to bench you, to sit you, to trade you. Players are more likely to have to fall in line. And I'm actually looking at the list of NHL head coaches. You've actually seen more older guys hired.
Yeah.
Daryl Sutter's got a job. Bruce Boudreau does. Rick Bowness.
Torts is back.
So I wonder how differently it is coaching when you're not the one with the most authority.
Yeah.
That's a unique situation here in Toronto.
Yeah, it really is. And it's, I don't think it'd be very much fun to find out. But
no,
that's why they get paid the big bucks.
That's right. So one of the decisions that Sheldon Keefe can make and has made is with their D pairs. I believe we have his commentary, Sammy, on the D pairs. Let's talk about those for a moment, shall we?
Well, we just wanted to get a look. It's a chance to move Rasmus back to his natural side. Mete Giordano had spent time, through camp together. It's just a look that we wanted to see. For now, we wanted to keep Riley and Brody together to have one consistent pair there, rather than going with 3 different pairs or 3 new pairs here. And I expect the guys will move around when the game actually begins. But
so there we go. We got some interesting D pairs for the Toronto Maple Leafs now. Hearing Haley talk about the D pairs, it's like, tough to feel super confident right now in any of them.
No, honestly, Riley and Brody, like Keefe said, the fact that an answer includes, well, you'd like to have one pair that stays together tells you everything you need to know about this group right now. They have been, so much of that pair has been about what Brody's been able to do for Riley. And I think that that's been important. Morgan Riley, especially given the contract extension, he is still your number 1 D. You need him to be that guy. But I do wonder if we get to a point where we say, and this is the problem with the Muzzin injury and with Sandin's play up to this point this year, I do wonder if we get to a point where you say, well, what could Brody do for somebody else? But Sandin hasn't played well enough to prove, hey, give me a little extra. I can handle more. And that's what it all goes back to. So I do like the idea of keeping that top pair together. I'm happy Sandin's back on his regular side, playing the left. I understand the idea of players have to, especially players at the bottom of the lineup, have to do roles that they're not necessarily completely comfortable with or outside of their purview. But if you want a guy to take a leap, and based on Muzzin's health, you need him to take one, I think it makes all the sense in the world to bump him back to his correct side.
I love it for Sandin. When we say nothing matters but the regular season, what we mean really is, obviously you have to make the playoffs and the games matter, but you have some leeway to try a few different things. If it doesn't work out, it's not the end of the world. What kills me about the Coyotes game is you didn't go down trying something or whatever. Matthews and Marner, they played like 25 minutes in that game.
It would have been the night to put Marner on defense.
Yeah.
there was ever a night.
Right. And
Muzzin goes down, throw 16 back there, see what the hell
16,
happens.
Go do it. But this is the thing with Sandin right now where it's like you mentioned you need someone to take a step. He's had a slow start. He doesn't look good on his offside.
No.
You know,
Do you remember the game? Detroit, Riley and him were a pair, and Keefe who takes everything of, well, you know, you want to look at the tape and see if they're right away. Throw that in the garbage.
awful.
Never give it to
Garbage.
me again. Yeah.
Stop that. Don't want it. So this is a chance to, all right, you get Sandin back on his side. And if I'm Sandin, my thought is like, can you promise me like 2 or 3 weeks here?
Yeah.
Like, you know, because it feels a little weird. Okay, I'm back on this side. You know, just let me get used to it again. So I really feel like they got to give him a chance to take the step. And it's one of the reasons I like that he's on the second power play unit tonight. You know, he's a guy who's shown he can, you know, handle the puck from the point on the
with the 9 seconds he'll get when the first units is still out there at the end.
Now the second unit comes out and just 10 seconds
That's what I
left on
wanted.
the power play.
There we go. That's what I wanted.
He doesn't miss a beat, Brandon.
I'm very, very concerned looking at the Leafs depth chart defensively.
I know, and it's like, do you feel better if Carl Dahlstrom's not hurt?
Also,
or if
Victor Mete
Ben's
is wearing
back?
number 98, which concerns me deeply as well.
Too high?
What are you doing?
McGillney?
No, he was 89. 98.
89, right. That's right.
You're a D-man. You're playing on the third pair.
Oh, thanks,
Put
Dad.
on number 2 and be done with it,
What
pal.
an old school take.
98. That's
Why
not
don't
an
they
old
just
school
give
take.
him Muzzin's 8 until he comes back?
That's not an old school take. That is a
Yes,
hot
it is.
shot number
A
to
hot
be
shot
wearing.
number.
Like Kubel wearing 96 in the fourth line's already rubbing me the wrong way. 98 as the third pair.
At least he's fast though. Like
Yeah,
he is flying.
No, 98 is nuts as a D-man.
You know, it's such one of those things where like my logical brain allows me to be like, that's a dumb take.
Yeah.
It does not matter.
No.
You know, whatever. There's no cool.
does
number,
matter.
He's
but
right,
it
though.
does.
He's right.
It does matter in hockey culture because there are certain numbers.
I would be hammering him for that if I was on the other team. Like, nice number, hot shot. What are you doing? Did you just get called up today? Like,
What
what
you
are
were 69.
Yeah,
you know?
honestly,
Like,
98. Oh man,
yeah, that's okay. Maybe
that's
it's
one away from Gretz. What are you doing?
Did they not have that exact take about Pugliarvi?
Yes,
in
and it was right.
And it was right.
I don't usually agree with the Edmonton Oilers beat media. Let's just say that. I don't necessarily see eye to eye with them, but
Yeah.
Pugliarvi wearing 98 in Edmonton was one of the most obscene things. And then he switched to 13. And
It's so
like,
funny
you
that
see?
99 is so good you can't even get close
Can't
to
get
it.
close to it. 97.
Connor's
with
allowed.
Yes, I will accept 97. That's the year he was born, right?
Yes.
Is there a more unlikely number than TJ Brody wearing 78?
No.
Like, is he not the most number 2 player
He
you've
really
ever
does
seen?
feel like single digits, snapping it around. He would look great in 8 as well, just 8.
It's funny. And this is a side conversation we can have. You just mentioned TJ Brody. It is remarkable how little we talk about the top pairing defenseman, TJ Brody. We never have a Brody conversation.
Doesn't make
ever.
mistakes.
He doesn't.
I
he just-
wish that we
I
had like
never
some computer
noticed him.
program that tagged use of names throughout the years. It'd be fascinating to know because you're
He's
right.
dead last.
Dead last. You know who we never talked about? Zach Hyman. Ever. We never talked about him except to say, good game. He goes and gets the puck or whatever. TJ Brody is that guy where you're like, yeah, he's fine.
Yeah.
He's
Well,
fine again.
It's because it's like the one time you mention him, it seems like, and he will have like 2 or 3 of these a year. We'll have like a beautiful stretch pass. And
Yeah.
that sets up Willie to go in. And then we say, hey, what a great goal by Nylander. But it's like for the guy who is the most steady player on the position of outside a goaltender, the greatest need for this team,
Yep.
specifically the right side,
Yep.
for him to just go, a guy who's perfectly paid, good job. Let's never talk about it ever again.
And the greatest irony of us never talking about him is the exact guy is Justin Hall, who's like the same right shot, tall, right side D, stay at home guy. And we talk about him every single day.
Because he makes the big mistake. He's the guy that
he
makes
doesn't make the big
He
mistake.
does. He's a good, solid player. And like you've laid it out.
Yeah.
He's had where people are like, he's been awful. And you laid it out. It's like, actually, he's really good with the stick and he makes good
Yeah.
reads. He kills penalties. But he has a tendency, like he did against Arizona.
That's why he makes 2, not 5.
And he just, throws a pickle right up the middle and, it goes in the back of your net and you go down 3-2 to the worst team in the
What
league.
did you say to me about that play?
Oh, it was actually McKee. I was arguing with about it. I was killing him Hall a little bit for not making that play. And well, it's tough play, rolling puck, and and I say, well, much like a goaltender with a tip shot, you are allowed to stop it. Like I know it's tough, but it's a tough play.
Yeah.
You make 2 sheets a year. You're in the NHL.
you're
allowed to make hard
it.
plays.
I hate rolling pucks on the boards.
Well,
hockey.
are you a winner?
Are you?
Yes.
Yeah, me too.
Do you make 2 sheets a year?
No.
I didn't
I
think so.
pay 2 sheets a year to play. Thanks, Canley.
Yeah.
It's you pay for the showers and the beer. That's what I pay for. Anyways, I think that was a hard play that he coughed it up, and I know I'm killing him for it, but I hate rolling pucks on the board like that.
TJ Brody, we
Gotta
don't
make the
talk
play.
about him because he makes the play, and then they pay him $3 million extra.
Yep, that's right. That's
Like,
so true.
That's the cost of the guy who makes the play versus the guy who doesn't.
So then is Kerfoot kind of the forward haul, and like he makes a little bit more money?
Yeah.
Maybe does some more things, but
He's
at
not
the end of the
supposed
day-
to make the
No,
big
exactly.
mistake, but he's not supposed to make the play
Exactly.
either. They're just
And who do we talk about? I feel like we talk about Kerfoot a fair bit. Like, it's
Yeah,
like-
he does come up quite a bit.
It's remarkable how similar Yarn Crook and Kerfoot look to me
As players, yeah.
as players.
I feel like Yarn Krok has a little bit more
edge.
A
Yes.
little
No
more,
doubt.
like
Looks
even though he took
meaner.
2 penalties,
Yeah.
like he takes a penalty chopping a stick out of a guy's hand. He takes a penalty getting in the way of a guy because he
Feels
made a
like
dumb
he
shot.
would. Feels like Yarncroc would shoulder nudge a guy to get past him, whereas Kerfoot like dips by him. That's it, right?
Meanwhile, Kerfoot's the guy who took a penalty to put Tampa Bay on the 5-on-3 in the post.
Oh, we only have not enough time in the show to talk about penalties from that series with me here. Like, please
Yeah.
don't even tempt me. Don't tempt
Okay,
me.
we
We're talking
won't
about
lead you
Justin
down that
Hall. We're
street.
talking about penalties. I don't want to do it.
All right, so tonight we're gonna get a look. Bunting, Matthews, Marner. Sorry, tomorrow Nylander, Tavares, Robertson. That's exciting, and then everything else pretty much the same. Should we look around the league and
no.
see what's going on? Oh,
One more poopy game, you got to break it up.
of which?
Just a little wake up call. Put Marner with Tavares.
Well,
for
1688.
a little you know what whack. Just get them off, get them away from each other for a little bit. I like one more crappy game, and you got to just throw them in.
These are just healthy Matthews for
No, just a half a game even for 35 minutes. Make
Yeah.
them think that they have to play with somebody else for a little bit.
Yeah, no, I agree. This is, if you were to
Kinda
be
comfort.
critical, so I am a Sheldon Keefe defender. Like, people accuse me of being like a Kyle Dubas defender. I think
me.
Kyle's a good GM. I like the way the Leafs are built, yada, yada. I am probably more of a Sheldon Keefe defender, having worked with him and seen how he's a brilliant hockey coach, in my opinion. And it's a tough job, and I recognize that some of the complications are tough to understand. In game, I think he does a really nice job, yada, yada. One fair criticism, I think, is he has shown an inability to punish players, to hold guys accountable. You know, today being
Back to the start of the show, right?
yeah, today being the latest version of that. But Sammy, this is a thing we talked about last year numerous times, that, you know, even when he's mad, all right, William Nylander, staple him to the bench. He's benched, down a goal with 6 minutes left. His old 88 crew. You know, he really hasn't been able to stick to his guns on punishments.
Yeah, I think that's fair, and I think that all goes back a little bit to roster construction, right?
Well,
if you have a
exactly.
third line that you feel a little better about, then
And
you
this
say
year, maybe you can do it then.
maybe you can, maybe.
But they depend so much on those 4 guys for production. If you're down in a game and Willie's done something dumb, but you're down 3-2 in the third period,
I
you're
want
like,
him out there.
I'm like, oh, I got to send a message to. Well, no, you look like an idiot if you're playing Engvall over him.
Well,
It's
but
a hard-
maybe
it's a
not.
hard balance to
Maybe
walk.
not if you start now and say all season long we've put Calle Yarncroc, a great player, out there, you know, in that position, or, you know, whoever else it may be. You know, this year, looking at the third line of Engvall, Kerfoot, Yarncroc, they're not never going to score. They're going to score 40 times, not 80 times, or whatever a top line scores. 30 times they might score. Sorry, that was a bit aggressive. But even Aston Reese, Kempf, and Abe Kubel, you feel like they can at least be out there a little bit more. So should give him a little bit more latitude if he wants to hold to some punishments. We'll see who's next, and will it be Michael Bunting? Probably Bunting.
Yeah, feels like a pretty obvious name.
All right. Do we want to do Lyubushkin, Landeskog, or Ekblad? What are our priorities?
I'm a guest. I'm sitting this one out.
Let's do Lyubushkin. I think we have the audio
Lyubushkin.
of the sound of that Louis. I think it's Louis DeBrusk calling that game last night with Jack Michaels.
Yeah, and so this is the Edmonton broadcast that does not want to make a big deal out of one of their players getting completely trucked.
This fellow, number 37, Fogle, a huge hit on Dylan Holloway. Lyubushkin with Fogle going right after him.
Can we get that again? It's the O at the top I want you to pay attention to. It's DeBrusk.
This fellow, number 37, Fogle, a huge hit on Dylan Holloway. Lyubushkin with Fogle going.
You're just watching the game, and that just comes out of you alone at home. I'm going,
I will admit,
37, Fogle.
I was watching baseball. Bad hockey fan. I was watching the baseball game. I love playoff baseball, so I had the NLCS on.
I actually, I did watch Ottawa Boston, but I caught the highlight of that one.
I was alerted to this by your friend of mine, Nick Kypreos, in our group chat. with these are the texts we got.
But this is, by the way, Nick is never excited in a group
Tage
text.
Thompson, wow, with 100 exclamation marks because he scored a sick goal.
Was nice.
McDavid-like, and then Labushkin with the hit of the year, maybe hit of the decade. Oh my God!
It was that like jarring. You don't see that in today's NHL that often. You mentioned the north-south. You're on the train tracks.
I'm trying to think of the ones, and all the ones from recent memory are like more than 10 years ago. Like I think of Ovechkin catching a guy. That wasn't north-south. That was like around the back of the net. Downey had some big ones on McCamp.
The one that reminded me of.
Yager.
And no, not even. And it's another Buffalo Sabre. It's Brian Campbell catching Umberger in the playoffs back in the day.
Oh, that was
like at that. It was in the similar spot of the ice at the other end, like around the blue line. To me,
you know what one I remember weirdly is Dion Phaneuf on Kyle Opozo. Phaneuf was in was at the time.
Him flying. Phaneuf has a absolute
his mixtape. Yeah, it's ridiculous.
But I think it's interesting because Holloway's a kid, right? How many games did you say he played?
That was his third NHL game. A quick Google search.
So there's something to be said that
I get mine from Bing usually.
The hockey. Yeah, my computer is stuck with Yahoo search somehow. I don't know how to change it. It's a nightmare.
Don't know how to change it.
I do. I change it. And
less computer. You're a producer.
I change it back, and then it goes. It's a nightmare. Anyways,
it's a nightmare.
Guys,
a living hell.
Guys I don't think expect that anymore.
So there's
no
really
way he was
thinking.
There's no way he was thinking like that puck comes off the boards. And he probably should just let it go for an icing. That was not a great spot
you go
to pick
line
up
up in your own zone and go, I'm not touching that.
But guys just don't get hit like that anymore. And especially a kid who probably came up through junior and probably never was even close to hit like that. It's a commentary on where the game's going because it's two different things.
So I wrote an article quite a while ago. I was working at The Score, and the article was called You're Still Allowed to Hit Hard in Hockey. And it was a response to people seeing all these hits and being like, take it out of the, whatever you think of these hits, it's a legal hit.
Yep.
You're allowed to hit a guy who has the hockey puck.
And it was perfect. He separated the guy from the puck like it was right on his stick. It was a perfect hit.
You're allowed to hit as hard as you want. It's allowed.
Oh, yeah.
And so, but when I played, and this is, wow, I feel like I'm getting old even using that expression. When I played, it was more common for people to seek out that hit.
Yep.
And so, like you talk about letting it go for an icing. My first thought before I touch that puck is you're looking the other way first. Like, is this a puck I'm even going to try to corral, or why am I this far ahead of the play or whatever? Yep. But it did seem like Holloway was a guy who had no thought that could even be coming. And you know what? 99% of the time it's not, unless you're playing Labushkin, Trouba. There's a handful of guys who might hit you there.
Muzzin will do it, but then he'll probably be out. But he nailed somebody. He nailed Hathaway.
Yeah.
In the Washington.
He can do it for sure.
Yeah,
for sure.
Certain guys that can do it, but not many guys do.
No.
And it just makes me really happy to see it. Like, not when guys get hurt.
Yeah,
but
it's one of the best parts of hockey.
It is so exciting.
as long as Holloway's okay.
And he seemed to be somewhat okay.
Somewhat.
But it's just, I've been
Holloway family.
I've been a lot of different games. I've been to a lot of different hockey games over my life, watched a lot of different games, been in junior hockey barns for 20 years of my life. And there's nothing that got the crowd. Like a goal, sure.
How many MVP chants have you heard for Austin Matthews in his career?
There's nothing that gets people going in hockey like a big open ice hit. And that was just an elite one. Hit of the decade, according to Kyper. Oh, my God!
It feels dirty that he wasn't here to discuss it.
I know.
Honestly.
Well, he'll get his 2 cents on it tomorrow. Gunner, thanks for joining us, man.
Always fun. Me and Gord down at the rink. We'll have the game on 590 tomorrow.
Oh, can't wait.
I know. This is great. We got Gunner, we got Gord. Tomorrow, Sammy, you and JD are back on. And I don't know, I'll be on whenever. You'll see me tomorrow. Please win. All right, this has been Real Kyper and Bourne and Gunning and Brandeo and McKee and Rolnick and Sportsnet. We will be back tomorrow.
From the City News 680 Traffic Center, I'm Carling Donahue. This report is brought to you by Kellogg's. On the westbound Gardner, we've got an issue west of Park Lawn. The right lane is blocked off with a stalled vehicle. Delays from the DVP. Westbound QEW, west of here, Ontario, left lane blocked with a stall. Delays from the 427. And westbound on the 401, approaching the 400 in the Express, a left lane and right shoulder block. Delays from the 404. This from Mini Wheats News Network. Tomorrow, expecting the kids